Hi everyone, for our video today, I'm going to be sharing with you the brushes that I purchased at the Brush Festival in Kumano, Hiroshima, Japan this year. Now, let me preface by saying that I did not purchase a ton of brushes. And the main reason why is I was a little bit unprepared going to the Brush Festival this year because this trip was actually a last minute trip. So this was not planned at all. And the headspace that I was at going into the Brush Festival this year was not about brushes, but it was actually about my partner and I doing the pilgrimage walk at Koyudo. So I've discussed this in a vlog before, so if you're interested to know more about that, I'm going to put the link down in the description box. And also, if you're interested to see our adventure doing this pilgrimage in Japan, please check out the playlist that I'm also going to be putting down on the description box. Okay, now I know that this video is a long time coming and I apologize for the wait. And like, there actually were a number of reasons on why this took so long. So at this portion, let me just give you a little bit of some life update, if you would oblige me. First things first, I've stated in a few vlogs that my unit was being renovated, and at the time that we were in Japan, the renovation was actually going on. And at the time of our arrival back here in the Philippines, the unit was supposed to be turned over to us, but unfortunately the unit was not finished upon our arrival, which was a little bit disappointing. But we told our contractor that yes, please finish as soon as possible, because this is beyond what we had an understanding for. And with that, my partner and I were Airbnb hopping for around 8 or 9 days, 10 I think, can't remember the exact date. And the main reason why I can't remember the exact date is because as soon as when we got here, my partner got sick. He had very high fever, to the point I was very, very worried, and I was giving him sponge baths every so often just to bring down his temperature. It was boarding around 38.8 degrees Celsius. So that to me is a little bit, no, that's not a little bit, but that's really, really high. And well, he of course he saw a doctor, he was undergoing medications, things like that. So he was actually good, but basing off of what the doctor said, he might have had a bit of exhaustion, which I totally understand, because after all, that hike that we did at Koyudo was one for the books. Oh my god, I can't believe how we've managed to actually do that. So that's it. Now, the other thing, I was also juggling between checking out the renovations here in the house and also going to work. So that in itself also took up so much time. And also one other pressing thing that's a little bit serious is that I actually had to see an oncologist. There's no need to be alarmed for now, because I actually do have a node here in my neck. Now, I've had this for years, so that's why I was never, worried about it. But my partner saw this when we were in Japan, really saw this. And you can only actually see this when I overextend my neck. But if I don't, it's relaxed, you don't see it. So he was really worried about it. And I told him, you don't really have to worry about it, super. But I think we've had this conversation after I've been to the doctor, and he said, I was really worried, especially coming from the fact that our dog, Malena, died from lymphoma. So his mind was, actually racing. But it's actually a good idea that we had to see, a specialist, because it kind of just rules out, the danger. And truthfully, I actually do have a nursing background. I studied nursing for around 2 years, and I also took care of my grandmother who had breast cancer when I was around 21 to 24. So I know how cancer looks like on the body, and if this was cancer, and if I've said that I've had this for years, if I didn't have this treated, I wouldn't be here with you guys right now. Okay, so basing off of my visit with the oncologist, he actually said that he's 90% sure that this is not cancerous, but he actually told me that I have to go and have an ultrasound, which I'm scheduled for, so that we can just eliminate whatever this node is, but he just says that maybe it must just like, be something odd, either with my vein or it's growing around each other, things like that. So I don't really know the specifics yet, but he just wants me to get an ultrasound just to be sure. So I'm scheduled to do that this week. Okay, yeah, so what else happened when I was here? Oh yeah, the internet here in my house also disappeared, and it took a while for the technician to actually check it out. And that's why all of my uploads, as soon as I got here back home to the Philippines, actually took a while because I had no connection and there was just a lot of things going on. But I'm so happy to say that at this point it has calmed down a little bit, and especially that for the past week I have actually just been fixing the unit. I have been cleaning out construction dust from the unit. I have been doing laundry almost every day because one of the boxes where we kept some of our clothes were actually here where they were renovating, and unfortunately the plastic packaging of that box actually came undone, and a lot of the clothes inside had a lot of construction dust. So oh my gosh, if anybody who has renovated a home knows how frustrating it can be to find dust anywhere in the house, you understand what I am saying. All right, so anyway, so yeah, so that's the little life update that I am sharing with you guys. And to push all of the negative things aside, or not so good news, let us talk about all of these magnificent brushes that I have in front of us today. Now, if you've been following me here on YouTube on a regular basis, I'm sure you would have known by now that I actually met up with Fude Bobo when I was at the Brush Festival this year, along with other Fude lovers like Yasmin and Nok, and we actually had a wonderful time together. And the highlight of that was actually being with Master Yoshiki and talking about brushes in general, may it be bristle type, handle design, dyeing techniques, things like that. It was such an amazing experience. I would have to thank Fude Bobo for that. So if you're actually interested to know more about my adventures at the Brush Festival this year, link is down to that blog, okay? And one of the main reasons why I met up with Fude Bobo this year is because I actually had to pick up my order from her. Now, I'm not gonna discuss this in detail with this vlog because I actually want to create a standalone vlog for these brushes, okay? But just as a primer, these are the brushes that I got from her. All right, so these three brushes are actually my order from her. So this is the Yoshiki by Koyudo 3D eyeshadow brush. Look at that, isn't that so beautiful? Very lovely. And then next I have the CH2, her pom pom brush. Oh, it's so amazing. It feels absolutely good on my fingertips. Now this has a bristle type, which is a mix of black and silver fox. And next, what I have here is her updated SO3 brush. So amazing. This is a mix of Gray Squirrel and Chikuhodo. Nice strength here. Okay, so I won't discuss this way too much because again, subscribe down below if you actually want to see me talking about these brushes, okay? Now, the two brushes inside this box, she actually gave this to me as a PR package, and I would like to thank you so much for that, Fude Bobo. Your kindness is amazing. Super. And I have actually been very intrigued by these two brushes because these are actually the Yoshiki by Koyudo 5-sided Kakiji Buzome dyed brush heads. And they look absolutely gorgeous. So I have here the small and the large 5-sided Kakishi Buzome dyed brushes here from Yoshiki by Koyudo, and they actually look so amazing. Look at that handle, you guys. Isn't that gorgeous? And the brush head here, wow, they actually do feel very resilient. The large brush here feels quite soft, but quite strong. Very interesting. I'm actually very excited to try this out. So again, if you're interested to see me talk about these brushes that I got from Fude Bobo, again, subscribe down on the description box. All right, and the next brush that I have here is actually from number 8. And what I have here is actually the brush that I have been eyeing ever since I saw it at the Brush Festival, last year. And I don't know why I didn't purchase it. Maybe because I was just having some trepidations because the brush head of this is actually very long for a stippling brush, okay? Now, by the way, this is their FD03, and the brush head here is made of synthetic and dyed goat hair, and this is actually a stippling brush. Look at that. Now, for comparison, if I am going to get my Sonia G sheer buffer here, and if I put them side by side, you can actually see that the synthetic bristles of the FD3 here from number 8 is actually longer in comparison to the synthetic bristles here of Sonia G, but the length of the dyed goat hair here is almost the same as Sonia G. So that actually is quite interesting to me. So I'm very interested to see how this will actually, work. And just basing off of running both of the brushes at the palm of my hand, you actually have a softer brush head here. So you don't have so much fibers in the core of it. Now, I have here my original MAC stippling brush, and I think this is the MAC 187. If I can remember correctly, I'll try to see if I can find the number here. Yeah, it's the MAC 187. So it's just really old now. So it's faded. Now this one was my go-to stippling brush, when I first started doing makeup professionally. And the trouble that I have with this is that I just found the bristles a little bit too long, and maybe that's why I was on the fence with this. But I guess my curiosity got the best of me, and I just got this. So this, by the way, is no longer in the market. It's no longer being produced because the stippling brushes from MAC now, they're all made with synthetic fiber. So this one was one of the originals, and it still looks quite good after 16 years, I have to say. Okay, so I'm just gonna put the FD3 right beside the MAC 187. They're actually the same, so maybe the FD3 here is inspired by this. And let's see if they are the same. So by touch alone, I can say that you actually have more core strength in the MAC 187 here in comparison to the, oh no. Let me correct myself. Very similar, but maybe there's just a difference in the brush head design in the way that they bloom, wherein this one blooms just a little bit wider, while this one, it doesn't bloom as wide. So I'm actually quite intrigued to see how this will work, and let's try it. Okay, so first things first, I'm just gonna spray a little bit of this Lisa Eldridge mist all over my skin, and let me press that in. Now, by the way, I already have my skincare on, I already have my sunscreen on, and everything that I am using in our video today is listed down below, okay? All right, so what I want to do is I actually want to apply a tiny bit of foundation, and I'm gonna be using my Lisa Eldridge here. So I'm gonna be squeezing a little bit of this number 17 here at the back of my hand, and maybe just a tad bit of the number 16, but not too much. And then I'm gonna get a spatula, and I'm just gonna mix it here at the back of my hand. And I'm gonna get the FD3 now, pick up product here, and apply this all over. In case I got one more pump of the foundation, and I'm just going to really buff it in. Okay, and I'm so happy to report that the brush actually works very well in buffing in and shearing out this foundation from Lisa Eldridge, and there was no streaking at all, and I was actually able to blend it out in no time, which is actually quite a surprise. Because again, I'm basing this off of a previous, experience wherein bristle types that are, really this long can be quite difficult to work with. But I'm seeing that, the foundation blended out extremely well. And I love that. Very nice. Now, moving forward, after doing this vlog, I am going to be playing around with this brush some more, because basing off of this experience, I think that this is actually good to use for lightweight foundations. Let's say like this. Lisa Eldridge, like, foundation, or maybe, like, skin tints, things like that. Anything lightweight. And I'm not too sure on how this will actually hold up with heavier types of formulations, like, creamier foundations. So I'm very, very excited to, like, really play with this and get to know this some more. But, like, just looking at things in my head, like, I can also use this if I just want to add, like, body shimmer on specific areas of the body, the clavicle, things like that, or even, like, highlighting products, anything liquidy, because, like, so far it really did the job well for me today, which is actually very, very good. So I like this. Oh, and by the way, I also got this brush here. This is also from number 8. Now, I did not purchase this, but I actually won this. So, number 8 actually had a activity that if you spend a certain amount of money on their, like, products, you actually get to, they can spin a gachapon. And when you open, like, the ball, you would know what your price is. And I actually won this brush. So, I think this might be made of either Weasel or Kolinsky. I'm not too sure, but I love the shape of this. It's square, and I love using brushes like this for actually, like, applying lipstick on the lips, especially, like, close to the lip line. So I'm so grateful for this. Arigatou gozaimasu, number 8. Oh, and by the way, before we move on to another brush company, I also have these things from number 8. And these are actually their Fude keychains. Look at that. So I love collecting these Fude keychains from different brush companies. And I think they're just so cute. And I sometimes give them out to friends, or I just mainly, like, hang them anywhere I could hang. Like, in my bags, makeup bag, like, retouch bag, things like that. So these are like my amulets. And this is actually the first time that I've seen number 8 create their own Fude keychain. Because I'm not so sure. But last year I didn't see this. Maybe I might have missed it, but, like, when I saw this, I said, ooh, I gotta have that, because they actually look quite different from the other brush keychains that I have in my collection. Okay, very cute. And these brushes are from Tanseido. Now, what really attracted me to these brushes at first was actually the design on the handles here. So let me just remove them from their plastic packaging. Okay, would you look at that? So the handles here actually have a snowflake design, and I think it's engraved into the handle. Very beautiful. Now, this brush here doesn't have a number, and I absolutely forgot what it was, but I believe this might be either red squirrel. I'm not too sure. I would really have to double check, because I just want to give you, like, the right bristle information. But I love the shape of the brush head here. Like, perfect for, like, blush application. Very, very smooth and very silky, and they actually, like, has a very nice snap back into position, and it has a very nice airy tip as well. Brush head is flat and round. It's a very traditional brush head design. Very beautiful. I have to look this up. Okay, anyway, so the other brush that they have here is the KQ12, and this one has a Kolinsky brush head, and it actually fit perfectly here in my under eye area for concealer application, or I could even use this for liquid eyeshadow, for bases, things like that. Now, the bristle here is actually very smooth. It's also very soft. I don't feel any prickling sensation at all. And, like, despite on how, like, there's a certain density in the belly here, but I don't actually feel any added pressure that this brush, like, applies on the skin. And I love that. So let's try this first. So let me get a concealer. Okay, so I have my NARS Soft Matte Concealer here, and this is in the color Tiramisu. I've already loaded a bit of a brush head here with the product, and let me just apply it here. Wow, the brush head here really holds quite a good amount of product, and it really applies it and blends it out nicely as well. No streaking, nice coverage it also leaves. And mind you, I actually did not pick up a lot of the concealer product, so you have to be very mindful on, like, the pressure that you exert when you dip this into either the pot or your palette. Now, usually with me, Kolinsky bristles, I use them for liquid or cream products because, like, they're stronger and they're more resilient, and they absolutely do a wonderful job of applying and blending them out in no time. Look at that, very nice. Now in terms of brush head, size and design, this actually reminds me of the concealer brush from Fude Bobo. So let me go get that. Okay, so this is the concealer brush from the Nebulae series, and if we put them side by side, ferrule to ferrule, we can actually see that the brush head lengths are almost the same, but there's just a tad difference in the brush head design, where in Fude Bobo's here kind of like tapers just a little bit, while the Tanseido KQ12 here is flat and round. And basing off of this try-on activity, I think that the KQ12 here is a brush that you would need if you're someone who doesn't really need so much coverage, but you want a brush that just picks up enough and it delivers enough, and it also blends out evenly and nicely. Look at that, I love this. Very nice. And also, one thing by the way, guys, I grew up being a makeup artist, playing with brushes with this brush head design, and that's why whenever I see brushes like this, it's very intuitive to me, because it really just brings me back. And it also just really proves that sometimes traditional designs still work in this contemporary world. Okay, so I am now at the Tanseido website here on my phone, and I believe I have found what this brush is actually, and this is called the Cheek Brush KAQ20, and this is a brush that has Kazan squirrel on it. Very interesting. I didn't know that. I was really thinking that this might have been either gray or blue squirrel, but upon close inspection of the color of the bristles here, it's actually not blue or gray. So it's actually a little bit red. So that's why I thought that this was red squirrel, but it's not, because this is how a red squirrel bristle from Tanseido would look like. So this is from the Fude Beauty collaboration series with them. So this is the Aka series, and I'm very interested to see how this will work. So let's apply some powder first. So even if this is a cheek brush, let's just see if this will pick up pressed setting powder, and it actually does. I'm actually not surprised that it wouldn't. So let me just apply this here in my under eye area to set the concealer. Nice even coverage. Wasn't expecting that. Okay, so let me do that here on the other side now. Bristle is very soft, but not as soft as the red squirrel here. So I think there's a certain buffing ability that this bristle type has. I'm not sure if I have any other Kazan squirrels here. So this might be my first Kazan bristle type in my collection, and I love that. I think you can also use this for finishing powders in the under eye area, and I just think that this is too big to actually use to apply powder all over. After all, this is actually designed for cheek products. Okay, so I have here my Fresco blush from Laura Mercier. So this is in a matte formula. So let me just pick up a generous amount of this here on the brush head, and let me just tap this all over. Okay, you only get a very light dusting of the color here on the cheeks, but then again, the color here is actually very neutral. It's not a pop of color. Okay, so I decided to get a different matte blush color here. So this is strawberry, just to match my shirt here. So let me just pick up a little bit of the product on the brush head here, and let me tap this here on my cheek just to give a nice hint of color. Very nice. And I'm also going to do that here. So I want to add a bit of some setting powder on top of my blushes. So I have here a little bit of my setting powder. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of it here on the tips of the bristles and buff it out. And the main reason why is because I kind of don't like how this bristle applied my blushes. Now, I need to play around with this brush some more, because this is the first time I believe truly that I have a Kazan bristle type in my collection. And of course, I was rushing through my makeup. I just applied foundation, and then with my powder application, I was just doing it in a very specific manner. And I also used a powder blush. And think, when you're using matte powder blushes, you also have to be like, you really have to prep your skin. Like, you have to have like, a lot of powder on your skin just so that the pigments will absolutely like, glide smoothly. And I didn't do enough when I was actually applying the blush. I thought like, applying spot treatment of, let's say, a setting powder would work. But no, I think you really need to like, really powder down your face when you're using a bristle type like this to apply cheek products. Very interesting. And I also can feel a bit of texture with this bristle type, which is actually quite interesting because usually like, gray squirrel, blue squirrel, or like, even red, like, squirrel, they're very silky. Very, very silky, very soft. But with this one, like, it kind of like has almost like a personality that's quite similar to pine squirrel. Like, I think this is the one that gives it its like, maybe strength and resilience. And maybe that's why you don't really get like, so much like, fullness in the belly here, because the texture that I feel is the one that actually does the job. Okay, but I am seeing now that after applying a little bit of the setting powder, the blush has blended nicely. Okay, so I think like, what I thought of was actually what I needed to do. More powder before actually applying like, colored pigments using this brush. Okay, very interesting. I love this. I love discovering how you can actually work with a brush when just, you're just playing around with it for the first time. Okay, so the next brushes that I have here is from the brand Meow. And these are actually just all eyeshadow brushes. So let's just remove them from the plastic packaging. So I have 3 brushes here, and obviously these are like, OEM brushes because there's actually a brand name in front of it. So I'm not gonna show you guys that because I actually don't know this brand as well. But anyway, so these 3 brushes, these 2 are pine squirrel bristles. Look at that, very, very obvious. And this brush here is made of Kolinsky. So when I first saw this on the table, I was very interested with it because I like the shape of this. And in my head, when I see a brush head like this, I actually use this for lipstick application, highlighter application, or even concealer application. And I initially thought that this was a synthetic brush, but when it was explained to me that this was Kolinsky, I said yes, I want that, and I absolutely love it. And I kind of love the fact also that the color of the handles that I have here is in blue because I don't want to have any more black handled makeup brushes in my brush kit because it's very difficult to find them inside, if you know what I mean. So this is actually very, very nice and very useful. And truthfully, in my line of work, the more lipstick brushes that you have, the better. Super. So for these 2, obviously they are eyeshadow brushes. You have a nice small brush head here on this one, flat and round. And then the other brush head here is actually tapered and it kind of goes up to a point. It kind of like reminds me of a Mizuho brush that I have. Hang on, let me go get it. Okay, so this is my Mizuho Pine Squirrel brush that I also bought at the Brush Festival back in 2018. So it's been a while. So let me put up the Meow large eyeshadow brush here. Look at that. So they have a difference in the fullness of the belly, of course, on how they bloom, where in the Mizuho one actually blooms here at the tips, while the Meow one really maintains its shape, very tapered. And I guess what I can use this for is a much more targeted application of product. So I'm sure you can also use this for powder application, to set your concealer. While this one, it has a bit of some buffing ability because it blooms widely here at the tips. And this one has a small brush head. It looks like it's a worker type of a brush head. It feels very nice and soft, but it also has a bit of pressure, wherein for sure this will actually give you the ability to buff out color in your eyelids. So let's try these 2. Okay, so I have here my Danessa Myricks Blooming Romance palette, and I'll just be using that matte shadows here. And I just find that the bristle here is just actually too big for this purpose, but let's just give it a try. So let me just pick up like, this color here, really load it into the bristle here, and apply this all over. Okay, that actually delivered the color quite well. Also quite smoothly. Very nice. And then what I want to do is maybe I want to apply like this brown color here using this brush. Load the tip, tap off the excess here at the back of my hand, and maybe just deliver the color here into my socket line. And buff it out. And okay. So it does deliver a very nice soft color. I love it. And I'm just going to add a little bit more intensity here in the outer V area. Very soft and very smooth. It really also helps to create a nice transition of color. And truthfully, I love the brush head shape of this because it's nice and round and flat, and it can just really help me to blend out the edges quite nicely. It actually delivered a very nice soft appearance. Okay, and maybe if I go a little bit more deeper, so let's try using this shade here with the same brush, and let me apply that here in the outer area. Very nice. I like how, like, this brush head works with me today. It also fits very well into my socket line. You can also hear in the outer V portion. It does have enough strength in it to really buff out the color, which I was so surprised about. Okay. Then let me just lay it here on the side, and then let me just, like, buff it this way, just so that it can help, like, create the depth that I need in this portion of my eyelid, just so that it's gonna create a nice lift for me. Look at that in comparison to my other eye. Very nice. Okay, that's absolutely great. And let me pick up the big brush here. Let me pick up the light shade here, and then let me just apply that here in my, like, brow bone area, just, like, as a highlight of sort. And let me pick up more, and let me pat that here, just so you have brightness in the middle of my eyelid. Okay, now I'm actually quite interested in using this brush that I won from number 8, and I'm just gonna use this, as an eyeliner. So let me pick up the cream type of formula on this palette. So I'm using the deepest shade here, and then let me just apply that here on my lash line. That actually works. Okay, let's just continue to buff it in. The brush head is actually holding its shape quite nicely. Also, it has a very nice strength, and despite this, it actually feels comfortable on the eyelid. I don't feel any prickling sensation at all. So I kind of forgot what bristle type was this. It might be Weasel. I forgot. Like, sometimes the problem with buying stuff during the brush festival is that there's always a language barrier. And my Japanese is also, like, so bad. It's just enough to actually help me to buy food and stuff, or finding, like, the right train station to get to where I need to be. Okay, so I'm seeing a little bit of a fallout. So let me get my stippling brush and let me just buff that out. Okay, I'm liking how this brush actually applied, like, the pigment here on my lash line. Like, it's still soft, it's there, but it's actually defined. So this is good in my book. So let me add just a little bit more, especially here in the middle portion, but not too much. And maybe just a little flick here, just to help the illusion with the lift. Okay, not bad. I love that. And maybe as a finishing touch, let me get a highlighting powder of sorts. And I'm gonna get the Kolinsky brush here from Meow, and I'm just gonna pick up a little bit of this and add it here, like, in the inner corner of my eye, a little bit more here in the middle of my eyelid. Helps to be very specific with your application. I'm actually liking how these brushes are gonna work with me today. They were actually very easy to maneuver, and I love on how soft they actually imparted color. Like even this brush here imparted a very nice soft application of the cream shadow from Vanessa on my eyelid. It just gave enough definition, but it kept it soft at the same time. Very beautiful. I love it. Very nice. Okay, so let me just do one more sweep. Love it. Love how soft it all look. Yeah, so far those are all of the brushes that I got. Is that it? So let me double check. Sorry. Hang on. Okay, so I have brushes here, which was covered at the back here on my table. Anyway, so I did not purchase these at the Brush Festival grounds, but I purchased this at the Brush Center in Hondori Shopping Street. And I only bought 2 brushes here, and this was on the sale wrap in that area. And I don't know which brush company actually makes this, but I was just very attracted to this brush here. And look at this very beautiful Pine Squirrel blush brush. Very nice and very silky, and oh my gosh, the strength of this is absolutely amazing. So let me get a finishing powder. Hang on. Okay, so I have here my very beloved Laura Mercier Candle Glow finishing powder. I have been saving this, and it's so unfortunate that this is no longer in the market, and I would love to use this brush for this purpose. Oh my god, the fullness of the belly of this brush is actually so amazing. Look at that. Look at how well it actually sprays on my cheek, but it keeps its shape quite nicely. And I do have to say that it even helped buffed out the color of the blush that I applied using this brush here. Okay, this is actually quite surprising. I love that. Okay, that blended very well. So I'm actually so surprised on the blending capability of this brush. My god, who made this? I'm sorry, you guys, there's no labeling here. Even here on the plastic, there is none. It's just the price of 6,600 yen. This is so good. Okay, I'm gonna treasure this brush. And then the other brush that I got is this, I think this might be Kolinsky. I'm not so sure because it has, okay, let me remove it from the packaging here. This is Kolinsky for sure because it has the same personality as one of my Kolinsky brushes here. It really snaps back into position quite nicely. Now I don't want to jump into conclusions, but this might be Kolinsky, and for sure we can also use this for eyeliner application, things like that. So let me pick up just this lighter shade of brown here with a creamy formula, and let me apply a bit of that here on my upper lash line, and that really soften it further. And if I pick up some more, maybe I can intensify my socket line area. Yes, amazing. I love that. So let me buff that out a little bit because I'm not in the mood for a strong cut crease, but I just want to keep it nice and soft, and that actually kind of worked. I love it. Love that. Too bad I don't know who actually made this, but in the future, if you find yourself in Hiroshima and you can't make it to Kumano to visit all these brush manufacturing companies, and you find yourself in Hondori Shopping Street, visit the Hiroshima Brush Center because you will actually have a number of selections that you can choose from, and you might be surprised on what brush that you might find there. And in me saying that, I'm actually so surprised that these 2 brushes are absolutely amazing. Amazing. Super. I love that. Okay, so I believe we have come to the end of our vlog for today. Did I just showcase you guys everything that I got? I believe that's it. That's it. So, here, one more thing. So here, it's at the back of my table. So I almost missed it. So this one is not a brush, but it's brush related. So every time I go to the brush festival, I always pay my respects at Sakakiyama Shrine because that is the heart of the brush festival. Like, I just go there to pay my respects to the Lord of the land. Like, I give thanks and I ask for blessings, things like that. And while I was there, I was talking to one of the priestesses, like, saying, hi, hello, it's nice to see you again. Like, it's just been only a year and it just like feels like yesterday since I was here. Yeah, that's things like that. And one of the things that I like to do when I am there is I actually like to purchase an omamori. So an omamori is an amulet, and they actually are always sold in various shrines in Japan. And when I was at Sakakiyama Jinja this year, I actually saw something new and I picked this up, and they actually explained to me that inside this omamori is actually a wood chip of the 800-year-old tree that used to stand in front of the shrine. And I was just so enamored by the idea, and I just so love it because for the first time that I ever went to the brush festival and I went to the shrine, I was such in awe of this very big cedar tree in front of the shrine. And unfortunately, last year when I went there, the tree was no longer standing in front of the shrine. And basing off of what I understand about the situation is that the tree was actually decaying and it was at a very odd angle and the roots were showing, and if they just maintain the tree there, it might cause damage to the gate in front of the shrine or to the shrine itself. So that's why they actually decided to cut it down. And I believe they created limited editions omamori wherein they actually put a wood chip of that 800-year-old cedar tree in this, and it's supposed to guide you in your life. It's supposed to protect you and give you abundance. So in the future, if you decide to go to the brush festival and if they still have this omamori, do have it, because not only is it a nice recuerdo or souvenir of your trip there, but it's also a nice way of actually helping out with the shrine financially to a certain degree. Okay, yeah, so I believe that's it. So those are all of the brushes that I got at the brush festival this year. So again, as I've said, it's not a lot, but I hope that it has one way or another again ignited your desire or your interest or your curiosity to actually visit the brush festival sometime soon. Okay, yeah, so that's it for me today. So if you guys have any more questions about all the brushes that I used today, please let me know down in the comments box and let's have a conversation about it. All right, okay, so I'm gonna let you guys go now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye.